Another thing I want to get clear from the start is that solfeggio is nothing like any modern solfeggio. So any listeners who are thinking, well, I know about Kodai method or movable do or fixed do or whatever, it's nothing like those. It's not the same as those at all. It's called the same, but it's not the same. In the 18th century, musicians could read 84 combinations of key signatures and clefs with just two patterns. Two patterns. So, nowadays in solfeggio, you have to learn your alto clef and your tenor clef. That's right. And it's just impossible. I mean, imagine a baritone clef in B major, and then it suddenly shifts to a tenor clef in, A flat major. It's almost impossible for us nowadays to do this. For an 18th century musician, there were only two patterns on the stave. Only two. You only learn two patterns, like we would learn, for instance, treble and bass. And you could read all 84 combinations.
Now, hexachord means 6 notes.
In solfeggio, they use 6-syllable hexachords. And for those listeners who are not familiar with this, it's very simple. It's the first 6 notes of a scale. So it's do, re, mi, fa, sol, la. It just doesn't have the 7 notes. And the reason for that, people think, well, why bother with something so complex? It's because if you have your scale made up of 2 6-note scales instead of 1 7-note scale, in other words, your scale outlines a tenth from the tonic to the third, or the 10th above, then the letter names remain the same in any part of the scale. So if I say do, re, mi, I can also go do, re, mi in a different part of the scale, and the letters stay the same. So once you've learned one pattern, it never has to change. Think, for instance, if I use modern scale degree numbers and I sing 6, 5, 4, 3, I then have to sing 3, 2, 1, 7, which makes no sense. In the 18th century, it was la, sol, fa, mi, la, sol, fa, mi. They both had the same. The interval pattern had the same syllables. So it's a wonderful system of learning.
Now, how would you start this from the very beginning?
If we were teaching it properly, if we were teaching it as it was taught in the 18th century, it has to be taught like a language. So it's not a textbook thing. It's got to be practical. So the very first thing you'd have to teach would be score reading, and score reading using hexachords and far clefs of plain chant, because then you can read every clef, every key signature with just 2 patterns. But that's the first lesson. Then when a student has been able to read music, what we would start with is the 6 syllables and putting them into simple patterns of phrases. And that actually teaches rhythm and phrasing and form. So if you say to a student, look, let's take the notes do, re, mi. What can you do with those? You can spend hours putting those 3 notes in different patterns and different shapes. And then when you get the 6 notes, and when you put the fa above la, the little semitone above la, which you're allowed to use in solfeggio, you can pretty much make any melody. So the first thing to do is how to put those notes into melodies, in rhythms. The next thing, of course, is how to sing them. And you start very, very simply. So you say, let's do a melody with some leaps of the third. Do, re, mi. Leaps of the third the other way, filling them in. Do, re, mi. Those are filled in leaps of the third. We then start to do some ornaments like turn figures. Do, re, mi. We might do appoggiaturas, we might do trills, we could do all sorts of stuff like that. And the system gradually builds up more and more complexity. And I've done this with students. I've taught my own students at university over a period of about 6, 7 weeks. And I can promise you now, they are composing beautiful melodies in the style of 18th century maestros. And you can't really go wrong when you do it, because you just know what sounds right and what doesn't. And you can learn counterpoint too, very, very quickly. You can learn really quite advanced counterpoint very quickly. So if you, for instance, know that the syllables la, sol, fa, mi compare with fa, mi, re, do, which is a printer basically, then you start to sing them in different ways. So instead of, for instance, la, sol, if I sing, I'll do an advanced one for you. La, la, sol. You'll find that will actually pair with someone else singing the same things in counterpoint. And we can create really astonishing counterpoint fugues within minutes, literally a matter of minutes in the lessons.
Now, to prepare for your book when it is published, what would you like interested musicians who are probably wanting to sink their teeth into it, what do you think they should practice so that when they get the book, they're ready to go into it? So what skills should they have in their back pocket?
Well, the crucial skill is just knowing what a hexachord is. And this is a real stumbling block, because it's only med-ren scholars who really know about these things nowadays. But it's essential. It was the basis of 18th century music, the 6-note scale. The 7-note scale was the basis of partimento, that's without doubt. But the 6-note scale was the basis of 18th century music education, certainly in Italy. So I would advise them to get to know the Guido d'Arezzo system. It's not that difficult. All you have to know is that the scale is made up of 2 6-note scales, and they begin on the tonic and the dominant. So the first and the fifth notes of the scale are your do. There are 2 do syllables in the scale. So just getting familiar with that would really help, because that's a real stumbling block for most modern musicians.